Four mothers are going for a last swim, and Mr. Burton's mourning the death of a unicorn. I'm Van Connor.
And I'm Adam Ball, and this is Off Screen, your 7-day guide to everything movies.
Boom.
Hello and welcome back to Off Screen. A long list of movies to talk through today with Van. First of all, any movie news or anything you'd like to discuss before we crack on?
Did we talk about the Avengers casting announcement last week that was kind of like weirdly expected? I always forget what we talk about in the news bits all the time.
I don't think we did.
But the biggie, I think, of the past week has been, and this weirdly dropped, stupidly, they announced this on April Fool's Day. And like, I checked the sources, I knew it was real, but still, like, most people would just say, oh, this is a terrible April Fool's joke. They have cast the Beatles. So I don't know if you know this, in 2028, Sam Mendes is making the ultimate cinematic ode to the Beatles. And he's not just doing it with a film, he's giving each one of the Beatles their own film, and together they will tell the complete story. And so, you know, we've now got our, I think, Joseph Quinn is George Harrison, and Barry Keoghan is Ringo, and Paul Mescal and Harris Dickinson. I think Harris Dickinson is John Lennon, and Paul Mescal is Paul McCartney. And I can't help but think, however you slice it, that is too macho for Paul McCartney, right? Like, Paul McCartney was never as much of an alpha male as Paul Mescal is. He's not fooling me with his pampered veneers, no.
I mean, it's interesting having four, one per member.
Exactly. It's being called the world's first bingeable theatrical experience. And you'll be able to experience it entirely within the month of April. This is all coming out in a cinema in April. Like, this is not a spreading it across a year. They're just dumping all four movies into cinemas in April 2028.
So each screen at the same time will be showing a different Beatle biopic, essentially.
There will be a point in which all will be showing in the multiplex. You'll be able to go to like a 10-screen multiplex, and near half the cinema is the Beatles. So I don't know about you, but I'm planning on wearing a Monkees t-shirt to the premiere. Like, that's my plan. It's either got to be the Monkees or the Stones, right? I think so.
Oh, brilliant. Well, I mean, I'm definitely going to go. But the thing is, which one do you see first? Whose do you see first?
John. Obviously John. Like, it's got to be John. I don't know how... he loses his way towards the end, but John is the most interesting story. Like, surely. I mean, Ringo's...
I think I'll start with Paul, though.
I mean, I don't know with Paul. I feel... he just annoys me so much. But I just find that Ringo's just got the ultimate bro story. So Ringo just like got to a certain level of fame, hooked up with a Bond girl, married her, and then decided to voice a children's talking train. I mean, that is what a life. I mean, and somewhere,
living the dream.
Yeah, that is, and yeah, and he still gets to be cool as hell now. I still think Ringo is pretty cool in his old age now.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that. I wouldn't, but I'm looking forward to that actually. Paul really looking forward to that.
You're a Paul guy.
I'm a bit of a Paul fan. I mean, I'm a pianist. I write music. Yeah. It kind of goes hand in hand in that sense. I'm not a guitarist really, so I follow him. But yeah, interesting. When's that out? Do we know? April? Did you say?
April 2028. And funnily enough, the first film we're going to talk about this week is also a homegrown British tale as well. This one is not being made as a big Hollywood studio production, though.
Yes, so our first movie is Last Swim in cinemas from today. I've seen the trailer. Personally, to me, it's just a bit boring, but it's over to you because you've seen it.
That is absolutely fair. I can see why you would think that. And I can tell you that to see the film itself is more of a vibes piece. It does have a narrative, obviously, but it is very much about the mood and the feeling of I'll tell you the plot and it'll explain this more. Okay, so this is the first feature, I believe, from Sasha Nithwani, who's done a few shorts and music videos and made this feature now that centers around a young woman named Zima, who is on the day of her A-level results. It's the day that's going to determine, off to uni, rest of your life type stuff. So she's about 18. And at the same time, though, this is coming at the end of a summer through which she has been quietly dealing with an ongoing illness that she's had that's sort of known, having taken a sharp turn into more severe and life-threatening territory. She's now facing having to defer university, for instance, to seek treatment that she may not even survive. And as she's in this mindset, we have results day. And it is her literally hanging out with her friends and making it through results day whilst living with this. And at the same time, they each have their own stories and their own dramas and their own things to be dealing with, and it's just about this one day with this young woman and her friends. So I've got a clip for you, so have a listen. At one point, I should stress as well, she meets a sort of up-and-coming footballer type who she forms a bit of a love interest in as well. That's an essential part of the plot. Have a listen. This is Last Swim.
Hi, Ziva!
Hi!
There she is.
What's up, Malcolm?
What's up?
It's my bestie, Zeba.
Malcolm.
Zeba. There you go. Good luck.
Taz said you got a little plan for us today, yeah?
I do.
11:59.
We doing at 11:59.
Last train, sorry.
I mean, from the trailer that I saw, it felt like a sort of coming-of-age movie, but there didn't seem to really be much of a plot to me.
And to be fair, it's all plot and little plot at the same time. So you are coasting along with what little plot there is, which is we are just spending the day together on results day. We're at the end of one chapter of our lives, at the start of another, let's just vibe for the day. But then there is a lot of plot in that you are dealing with each character's individual plot. In particular, Zebo, you could hear, in prominently in the clip. You also get Malcolm, for instance, the upcoming footballer, and there are other friends dealing with their own things as well. The cast are terrific. And as far as the actual production of it, the craft of it itself, I was really down for this. Like, I think it really captured, like I say, a vibe. It has that vibe of that whimsical late summer day when you get your results and you're just in a complete, give over to freedom kind of a way. You are on to the next chapter. This chapter is ended kind of thing. And I think the cast really portray that very well. I think they make that quite infectious. You go along with that spirit, but at the same time, it does allow you to stay kind of locked in on the personal dramas as well, which they deal with aplomb. In particular, and I had to check, Diba Hekmat as Zeba in the lead. I mean, Barnstormer, she's just a great performance. I just want to single out. And I didn't realize this guy was British. This was a real weird moment for him. Like, wait, why is this guy talking like that? And it's, what's his name? Jay Lycurgo from Titans and The Batman. He has a small role in The Batman, and he's one of the Robins in Titans. And because he's just got a very memorable look. He's got a memorable face. And he just started talking with this London accent. What's happening right now? Oh, which is a weird thing that happens with people on DC TV shows, apparently. But yeah, I was really swept away in, I think, the vibe of this. I was invested in that drama, and I kind of wanted to be swept along in the current by both, to be fair. Wasn't an overly long movie. I think it clocked in about an hour and a half. It was specifically an hour 36. It was 96 minutes. So it's an hour and a half with credits, basically. You are down for that performance. You were there for that personal drama. But like I say, more than anything, you were down for that vibe, for the very naturalistic cinematography, for the handheld movement that goes with it. And really the way that it kind of stays grounded. There's a lot of close-ups, for instance, on the drama. But you don't feel like it's intrusive. You do feel like you're kind of in the air, that you are still in that vibe. So I would recommend it. I do think it's really something.
Well, if you want to make your mind up yourself and go and see it, you can see Last Swim because it is in cinemas from today. Right, still to come then, we are going to look at Mr. Burton, which is, of course, all about the biggest star Wales has ever produced. And we're going to see what Van thought about that movie next. Hello and welcome back to Off Screen. Let's move on to our next movie then, and this is Mr. Burton. So, I mean, is this a biopic or is it just dramatised? Because it doesn't say biopic on IMDb.
It's a bit of both in a sense. So, this is basically the origin story of Richard Burton.
Right.
Okay, I was going to do this with a little bit more suspense, but obviously you've gone with the lead that it's about Richard Burton. But the whole thing is, of course, Richard Burton was not born Richard Burton. Richard Burton was born Richard Jenkins, and was legally adopted by his school teacher, Mr. Burton, who Philip Burton, who's played for the screen here by Toby Jones, who effectively took him under his wing. He was about the age when you can leave school, where you can just go and work. You got to bear in mind this is like wartime Britain, and he is very much an Eliza Doolittle type. You know, at the beginning of My Fair Lady when she's all rough around the edges. What's going on here then? Kind of thing. Imagine the Welsh equivalent, and that's how Richard Burton is portrayed in his teen years. Like, he's very much with the Welsh accent. He's not too sharp, but at the same time he has a love of Shakespeare and drama and the ability to remember very long passages of dialogue. And his school teacher sees this in him. He sees that he's growing up living with his sister and brother-in-law, that his father is a notorious drunk around town, that he basically has no one. He's kind of going to get lost in the system. He can get lost into the established lifestyle of just going and getting a job down the factory or the local shop. And he decides, having discovered this love of theatre within him, to basically take him under his wing and turn Richard Jenkins into, as you pointed out, the biggest star that Wales ever produced. So imagine, if you will, Dead Poets Society meets My Fair Lady. And that's what, with Toby Jones as, exactly. So have a listen. This is Mr. Burton.
Whose is this?
That's mine, sir.
Henry V, prologue by heart.
All for a muse of fire, they were assigned the brightest heaven of invention.
That'll do.
It's not much of a punishment, to be honest with you. I bloody loved it.
I shan't have this family falling short any longer.
Mr. Burton, I want to be an actor.
To be an actor, you will need to move in certain social spheres.
Bring it to your mouth.
I've got to admit, I am a big fan of Toby Jones. The first time I saw him was in the series Detectorists on Netflix. I don't know if you've seen that or not. Brilliant.
I have, and also don't forget, he's part of the Marvel universe. So,
of course he is.
I would have to be a fan. He's Armin Zola. He's been an integral part of Marvel history, actually. But of course, he's just Toby Jones. He's in everything, and he's always good in everything, as well.
Yeah.
And as you can hear there with our young Richard Burton, that's Harry Lorty as young Richard Burton. He's noticeably credited on IMDb as young Richard Burton, not Richard Jenkins, which would have made more sense. But I stand by that assessment of it as a combination of My Fair Lady and Dead Poets Society. It sort of fits in the middle. The film nicely is not afraid to address the elephant in the room as regards the relationship between mentor and pupil, because, there's optics to consider, even in the note, and this obviously does come as an actual plot point and as a point of the relationship between these two men. I would say that Lorty's performance as Burton is actually quite towering at times. It's really impressive. It seems like the kind of role that normally kind of gets forgotten. It's usually a half-decent impersonation and with a little bit of heart, and then you sort of forget about it. But this, and in particular the way that he's able to switch between him off stage and on, when he puts on the voice, it is really simple, and you lose yourself in it. Whenever he puts on the Richard Burton voice, you lose yourself in. It's like watching a magician pull his trick, except he's already a magician for pulling the trick of playing a different character in the first place. So you know what I mean? So it's kind of a double blind. It works very well, and it draws you along on this, I thought. In terms of the direction and the screenwriting, though, it's a little ITV. Let's just say. No, so that's disingenuous. No. It's a bit Channel 4. I would say it's about the Channel 4 standard of writing. That's it's somewhere between those two. You know what I mean, on that spectrum. In fact, BBC 4. There you go. That's it exactly. It's BBC 4 level, right? It is. It's directed by Mark Evans, which, like I say, biggest star that Wales ever produced. It's very obvious that this is kind of this is a story that is being told and presented as look at our boy. This is a very pro Wales movie. You know what I mean? And it is about the heart of this community and everything. And it's very obvious as a result of that getting a director named Mark Evans, Mark with a C, Evans, might be the most fitting thing imaginable. If you go through his filmography as well, it is all like work. It's all not like kind of televisual work that in some way relates to Wales. So you kind of know what you're getting. But Toby Jones and Harry Lorty are and Leslie Manville. I mustn't forget Leslie Manville, who is Mr. Burton's housekeeper, who becomes sort of a surrogate family with them. So there's a little bit of the holdovers as well in there. So Leslie Manville, those performances though do elevate the material, and you do find yourself emotionally invested in it because you are emotionally invested in those performances. Less so the story, less so the film presented as as a finished product, but definitely because of the performances.
Does Elizabeth Taylor pop up in this at any point? Because didn't he marry her?
Yes, he did. Right, okay, so funnily enough, because it's the obvious thing, isn't it? Any story that involves Richard Burton, right? You've got to. It's like mentioning Charles without Diana, isn't it? Or Pamela
exactly
without Tommy Lee. To put it in in my royalty. But right, so literally the film opens with text on the screen that tells us, that forewarns us, without Philip Burton, there simply would be no Richard Burton. Like everything that Richard Burton is and became and is, it began with Philip Burton. And that is literally what we get told in text form at the start. So she is involved in a sort of tertiary way. We do get sort of forward from her of sorts. But a friend of mine, funnily enough, from back home in Sheffield, Tony Earnshaw, was the film critic for the Yorkshire Post for years. I think he went into just writing books full time, and he is the world's biggest Richard Burton obsessive. Literally has written countless books on Richard Burton, and I have neglected this week to check in with him because I've not spoken to him in a couple of years. Send him an email and say, "Have you seen this one?" I'd be curious to know what he thinks of it. But because the story is the story is quite fascinating as far as this schoolboy moved in with his elderly school teacher in a small Welsh town. Obviously people talked, and it just looked like, from the outside, it must have looked really weird and freaky, like back in them days. But yeah, and the story doesn't really shy away from it. But I wonder how true to life that actually is. Be interesting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because I was interested on that exact fact, because it doesn't list it as a biographical movie. It lists it as a drama. So I was a bit like, I'd kind of like it to all be true, because that's how I invest in something if it's real.
Well, like I say, I mean, it's a biopic in that it does cover a certain period of time of his life. I mean, it's a biopic in that way that we said this about something recently that wasn't as good, but the Muhammad Ali one that Michael Mann made with Will Smith, Ali, how that only covered like 3 years in his life. This covers ostensibly his last year or two at school. And then there is a time jump, I think, for the third act that takes place some years later. So we do get to spend time with them after a prolonged amount of time as well. So we do get that little sort of period of his life. It is pre-stardom. It's obvious that this is before. It kind of ends around the era when he will have broken out, before he became the big... He literally gets to do the thing on the title. Things like Richard Burton became, in case you didn't know, we would have got Elizabeth Taylor on the beginning of the film, but in case you didn't know. Yeah. So, so you do get a section of his life. There is still a Richard Burton biopic you could make. It's not all been squandered, but they've covered, like I would say, roughly a 10-year period with this.
Well, if you're interested, go and watch it. I mean, it sounds great. It's definitely something I'd like to see. Mr. Burton is out in cinemas from today. All right, then, our next movie, Death of a Unicorn. We're still going to look at Four Mothers as well before we finish today. So we'll see what Van thought of Death of a Unicorn in just a second. Stay where you are. Hello and welcome back to Off Screen. Let's talk unicorns. So the next movie this week is Death of a Unicorn, and it's on Netflix from today.
No, sorry, that's wrong in the script. It's a cinema one. Sorry. No. I always miss one. Don't I? In the running order. Sorry.
I was going to say, you did that last week, didn't you, as well? And that made me look like an idiot. So, it's in cinemas from today, Death of a Unicorn. I've seen the trailer, but I'm going to hand straight over to you, Van, because I'll let you start where you want to start. I don't want to ruin it.
Right, feature directorial debut of Alex Sharfman, who has written and directed this. This is a wholly original creation. This is an entry into that canon that we've had in recent years of what I keep calling Eat the Rich movies. You know, kind of like The Menu or Companion.
Yes.
Or Triangle of Sadness, where, you know, it's a satire. It's a funny, you know, it's quite a broadly accessible satire, but it is about class ultimately and things like that. Right, this is an entry into sort of that pantheon. It stars Paul Rudd, Jenna Ortega, Téa Leoni, Will Poulter, Anthony Carrigan, and Richard E. Grant, as well as I think Jessica Hines is in there as well. So at the start of the movie, Paul Rudd and Jenna Ortega are a widowed father and daughter. Who, they're widowed, I believe. She's still sort of high school kind of age, and he's struggling with being a single parent. They land on a flight in a country I can't figure out. Neither Faith nor I could figure this out after the screening, like where it was meant to be. But you and I have just checked off, Mike, and it's Hungary. It's filmed in Budapest, but it's Hungary. So let's say it's Hungary for the sake of it, to visit his client or his boss, effectively. They drive out to a remote compound, a remote lodge that is owned by the eccentric, delusional billionaire owner of Paul Rudd's company, a dying man played by Richard E. Grant, who is on his last legs. And he wants Paul Rudd, as part of he's a member of the legal department, to go out there and set himself up as the executor of Richard E. Grant's estate. He will manage the family fortune when Richard E. Grant passes. He'll make sure the idiot son, who's not at all modelled on one of the Trump boys at all, is given endless money to keep pursuing his ridiculous endeavours. He'll ensure that Téa Leoni's spoilt, society gal wife is given the money for her, fundraisers and things, and that the house is run and paid for. However, on the journey there, on the long, forest road there, they hit an animal whilst distracted that they think is a horse.
Of course.
And it's right next to a sign that says, if you kill any of the endangered wildlife around here, you go to prison. So Paul Rudd decides, naturally enough, to shove it in the back of his car, getting a little bit of the blood on his daughter's face, her acne specifically, and getting a bit in his eyes. When he arrives at his boss's compound, his daughter's face suddenly clears right up. It's like Clearasil to the nth degree, and it's instantaneous. And Paul Rudd's gone all Spider-Man. When he has his glasses on, everything's blurry, but when he takes it off, boom, Peter Parker, baby, 2020 vision. It turns out that what they've actually hit is a unicorn, and it has the ability to heal anything. And of course, what do you think happens when a bunch of rich pharmaceutical people learn this? It quickly devolves into, you guessed it, a backstabbing, backbiting, who can screw who, black comedy. Have a listen. This is about the tone, and this is Jenna Ortega, who pretty much stands as the voice of reason in all this, as her father and this family start to get corrupted by the dollar signs.
Dad.
Hold on just a second, Red.
3 grams at 2.5.
Right, okay, 2.5 at 300.
No,
Got it.
no, 3 at 2.5.
Oh, sorry.
Sharp ears, do better.
You're right, I apologize.
What's going on?
Oh my gosh, I've never seen so much money before in my life. I think this is gonna change things for us.
Right, finish your prep.
Let's bag the beast to go.
We're going wheels up, Ricky Tick.
So, my boy says the Crown Prince and his cousin are gonna want an 8-ball to start.
What?
I mean, 3.5 grams.
It's such an oddly specific number.
Yeah, I don't know. Weird, but that's what he said.
First thing I'd be doing with that unicorn blood is rubbing it all over my wallet.
Right. Well, this is the thing. So, I mean, I'll tell you off, Mike, about some of the stuff they get up to with it. But I will say, as ideas go, this is great.
I love it.
It's pulled off so well. Like the concept is really good, and the execution of it. Because believe me, I'm leaving a large chunk out. The trailer actually weirdly hasn't, to an extent, but I am deliberately choosing not to mention. The execution of it, the avenues that it chooses to explore with this concept are interesting. They are the kind of lunatic stoner thoughts that I would come out with in a bar. Like, if I sit there, when I'm talking about plot, yeah, but it's all, you know, when you're talking, you chat with your mates, like, yeah, it's all well and good until, you know, blah, blah, blah. Or like, why didn't they just fly to Mount Doom on the Eagles in the first place? That kind of thought. Every possible one of those thoughts you could come up with for this movie, it answers. Like, very strangely, in a way that Companion did. The very similarly toned Companion did. And if you were a fan of Companion, if you liked that tone and that humor and that kind of storytelling, this is the ideal follow-up. That it's come only about 6 weeks or so after Companion, maybe 2 months, is fortuitous. I think this is a really good sort of next thing to see. In fact, if you get the chance to see the pair in relatively short succession, do. Have you seen Companion yet?
No, haven't seen that.
I heartily recommend that to you. Absolutely watch that with your dear lady, and I think you'll both very much enjoy. I think it's a fun, dark, twisted, murderous comedy. This is very much the same kind of thing: fun, dark, twisted, murderous comedy with horror elements as well. This is more in the realm of horror than Companion was. And of all of the so-called Eat the Rich canon so far, this is by far, this goes only, I would say this is evenly matched with The Menu as far as being a horror film. This has more jump scares.
I loved that.
But closer to The Menu in terms of its horror side of that. The performances in it are all great fun. Everybody's playing it they're playing it for absurdity. Like, there's no one's watching this and assuming it's, a drama. Like, it's a comedy because everyone's doing that delivery. It is about the score punctuating the gags. It is about the execution and timing and rapport and back and forth. I mean, I could write a book on Will Poulter in this movie. Will Poulter in this movie is such a little bloody gem. I'm saying little, the man's about 9 feet tall. But he's very clearly he's the Don Trump Jr. or Eric of this movie in his ridiculous swimwear with his towel-in shirts and ludicrous tiny swim shorts and oh god, he is just he's the worst person. But he's so watchable. You know what I mean? And Will Poulter plays it to perfection because that is a hard balancing act. To just be such a truly awful person and yet to just be as funny and likable and watchable at the same time as he is. And he's brilliant. And then there's Anthony Carrigan, who I'm a big fan of HBO's Barry. With Bill Hader, where he's the hitman who becomes an actor, and Anthony Carrigan was kind of one of the breakout stars of that. He's in Superman this summer as he's a supporting player in Superman. I'm hoping that gets him some recognition, some love. It's nice to see him in a feature film role here, and he's very much doing the comic, flexing his comedic muscles in not the same way, but to the same lengths that he got to do in Barry. Here, he's very deadpan. He's very much the well that happened character, but in a much better executed way. So it's between those two for who steals this film. But I think this is an absolute blast. That this is someone's first feature film. Wow, what a result. Everything about this works for me. The look of it, the cinematography, the very particular color palette of it, the design of the unicorn and the way I very much like this. If there is a bum note to have, because, like you always ask me, if you could change one thing about it to make it good, what would it be? So there's always got to be one thing. Negatives, there are a couple of bum visual effects shots. I know this is a very minor thing, but it's one of those, like, there has to be something negative I can say about it, and this is literally the only thing. And it's such a weird look that there is one point where all I'm going to say is Téa Leoni's body shifts and then shifts back during movement. That's all I will say. And it's up there with the disappearing velociraptor in Jurassic Park for me as one of those things that I will never unsee now. It's just going to be, I'm going to remember that shot. Every time I see that movie, I'm going to remember that happens, like the disappearing velociraptor. So, you know, it's the only bum note I have about what is otherwise, in my book, an absolute 2 thumbs up, 5-star film.
Wow. I cannot remember the last time you said that about a movie that you've reviewed. Genuinely.
Probably Companion, funnily enough.
Probably was. Well, I mean, what one hell of a review. And actually, hearing you review that in that way has really made me want to see it now, because it looks good anyway. But yeah, absolutely in for this. Death of a Unicorn in cinemas from today. Right, we've got one last ride for you. We're going to see what Van thought of Four Mothers next. So we'll be back in a sec. Hello and welcome back to Off Screen then for one last ride. We are going to make things a little bit light-hearted now and dive into a comedy drama called Four Mothers, which is out in cinemas from today. I don't really know anything about this one, Van. I'm assuming it's about four mothers and it's funny.
I mean, yeah, and touching and dramatic and moving. Yeah, okay, so... this is a new movie from Darren Thornton, who has co-written this with Colin Thornton. It is the story of a man played by James McArdle, who's he's written his first novel, and it's been released in the UK, and it's been released to sort of relative indifference, but is now being released in the US, and he's starting to experience the very faint embers of, you know, this is the boom moment of my career. He's getting those faint embers. We've all been there. 9 out of 10 that don't happen, believe me. Anyway, beside the point. Thank you, therapist. So as this is going on, however, he is also caring for his elderly mother, who has had a stroke and has lost the ability to speak. She's relatively infirm and needs looking after anyway, but has now also lost the ability to speak as well, and has to communicate through an iPad speech app. She's played, incidentally, by Fiona Flanagan, who was the mother in Four Brothers. You ever see Four Brothers with Mark Wahlberg and Andre 3000?
How funny.
Yeah? Did you see that one? I love that movie. I absolutely adore that movie. Also, Chewie Chow is incredible in that movie as the villain. Anyway, beside the point. Eat! Anyway, so
Four brothers to four mothers.
Oh, I'm gonna she's gone from four brothers to four mothers as old Fiona Flanagan. Anyway, so however, our lead is he takes his mum to church one day with her mates, kind of thing. This is all Irish, by the way. So set in Ireland. Everyone's quite religious. As he takes his mum to church, along with her friends of comparable ages, he meets up with his friends who are their sons looking after them, who are like a gay couple and another older gay man who's like struggling with being single at a certain age. His mates then decide to bugger off to Pride. Sorry, not Prague. I went to Prague. They go to Pride in... Where do they go? Some luxuriant tropical island that's doing Pride, and it's portrayed as just gay paradise. Anything you could want is here. Like, we literally get shown a toys video. So they all bugger off independently and leave and just dump their mums on our lead. So rather than having one mother to look after, as the title cleverly suggests, he has four. Have a listen. This is a clip.
Hey. I need to talk to you in private for a minute.
Want to go to Galway?
What?
Want to see more of the medium?
Mom, what are you talking about?
Galway. Medium.
Your mummy was showing us these videos of more of the medium, and Rosie was saying we should find out if she did in-person mediation. Anyway, we sent her a message on Facebook, and to cut a long story short, she's booked us in for a session at 4:00 today.
We just want to know that they're at peace.
Who? Your daddy.
And Nigel.
And Larry.
I just fancy the idea of a road trip.
This definitely, for me, has the potential to actually be really quite funny.
Yeah, and it is at times, and it tugs at the heartstrings in all the right places, and it deals with parental patriarchal trauma and things like that, and enabling mothers come up and things like that. It tugged the heartstrings with exactly the right effect, as you can hear from the clip. It has that tone. It has the same kind of tone, that level of harshness, as something like Three Men and a Lady. You know what I mean? Best way
Yeah, great movie.
Kind of like that. It has quite a lilted, very twee Irish tone to it that I think really goes the closest to something like that. I mean, I think it's a 15, but you struggle really to work out quite why. Like, it really doesn't seem, other than a couple of instances of cussing, like, it really seems that this could have been a 12A. I could see it being really popular with the Grey Pound. You know, like the senior discount Tuesdays, which are like, I don't know if you know this, are a huge revenue earner for cinemas. Did you know this?
Yeah. Is it half price or something, isn't it?
It's half price, and you get tea and a biscuit as well. I'm not sure if you.
Oh, I didn't know about the tea and the biscuit.
You get tea and a biscuit. You get tea and a biscuit. I think you have to actually be over 60 to actually get it. But this is true.
Darn it!
I think it's on Tuesdays, and this is actually like an unspoken bedrock of the British cinema industry. Is Tuesday. It's quite strange, but if you go and see a film on Tuesday afternoon, it's rammed. It's really true. So I could see this being quite popular in your local Cineworld, for instance, come Tuesday. Won't be a huge opening weekend type, and it deserves to be. There's a lot of sort of really sort of sweet writing in there. There's also, as I say, quite dark but sincere and heartfelt writing as well. So I really liked it. I really jammed with it. Yeah.
Well, if you want to check it out, you can. Four Mothers out in cinemas from today. Maybe avoid Tuesday unless you're over 65.
Maybe, yeah. Don't want to repeat the experience I had. I don't know if I've ever told you this story. Opening night in 1997 for Austin Powers International Man of Mystery. My best friend and I, huge Mike Myers fans, went down, saw the Friday night opening show like 7, 8 p.m. kind of thing. We did not realize, I think it was like 8 p.m., something like that. We kind of just managed to get in because it was 15, we were like 14. Didn't realize until we got out, it was also the opening night of the Full Monty in Sheffield, in Odeon. You could not get through the lobby. You literally had to squeeze through. It was like being in a mosh pit, except there was a lot. It was like being in a mosh pit made of perfume. Would be the best way to describe the foyer of the Odeon Sheffield the night that the Full Monty.
Doesn't happen like that anymore, Van.
Every mum went. Your mum will have gone. My mum went. Everyone's mum went to the opening night of the Full Monty. It's the weirdest thing.
Hell yeah. My mum went to the opening night of the Chippendales.
So did mine, I think, funnily enough, as well.
Well, if you want to check out Four Mothers in cinemas from today, I do feel, before we do Movie of the Week, we do need to give a little nod to somebody who we lost this week. And of course, you and I have always, since our younger years, been massive fans of Top Gun, whether it be the first one, whether it be Top Gun Maverick, which obviously was only out recently. And of course, we did lose Val Kilmer, 65, I think he was, wasn't he?
65 or 66, I think, thereabouts. Have you seen the documentary Val? Because now seems like a good time to amplify. Was it what do they call it? Like amplify? Anyway, move on. Push the Val Kilmer documentary. I thought that was a really good documentary. Gave you a really good insight into it.
So
he was one of the great. He was notoriously difficult to work with, according to some. But beloved by others, and starred in so many movies that I love. He's Iceman primarily to you. Primarily to me, he's Batman. Funnily enough,
course.
I was 12 when Batman Forever dropped, and so I always remember that being the first big role. I knew of Val Kilmer, I knew of him in other films, but I think that was the first role I saw him in that was kind of like iconic to me. He'd already been in, I think, Tombstone at that point as well, which again he was quite well known for as well. Tombstone was around the same kind of time. There was Willow, The Doors, obviously Top Gun was kind of a big thing. Top Secret, which was I think his earliest big hit. But the one I love him for the most is Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, with Robert Downey Jr. from 2005, which if you've never seen it, he's hilarious in that. He's brilliant in that. He will have you rolling about in hysterics. He's fantastic in Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
Well, a sad loss, but as we were mentioning earlier, he kind of bookended his life and his career with Top Gun, really, because that was the last time he was on our screens.
And also that particular scene in which we say goodbye to the Iceman character. And it was Val Kilmer portrayed as Val Kilmer was, with his condition and in his chair and, you know, with the required equipment needed for him to deliver the performance. And it was, you know what, he got to go out that way. And that's actually really something.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Okay, well, before we disappear, movie of the week. I'm guessing you're going to go for Death of a Unicorn.
Yeah, Death of a Unicorn, absolutely. Hands down, like nothing else this week comes even close.
Yeah, I thought that might be the case. Well, next week, let's have a quick scout through what we've got. We've got The Amateur coming up next week.
We've got The Amateur, which is the new spy movie with Rami Malek and Pierce Brosnan. We've got King of Kings, which is an animated... I think it's Ray Fiennes is providing a voice for this, which is a weird one given his association with King of Egypt. King of Kings, which is... oh, no, Ray Fiennes is in The Return, sorry. King of Kings is like a Moses type. Is it Moses? I think it might be Moses, but an animated one. The Return is Ray Fiennes. That is based on Homer's The Odyssey. And last but by no means least, a movie I've been looking forward to ever since I saw the trailer ahead of the premiere of The Wolfman. They put this as the trailer before. It's called Drop. It is the new Blumhouse movie in which a widowed or divorced mum goes on a first date to a restaurant. And while she's on this date, she starts getting airdropped threats.
Oh, spooky.
With pictures of her kid and things like that on it. And I can't wait for this. This looks badass. Pour it in me.
We will find out, because that is, of course, all we have time for on Off Screen this time round. We will be back next week. Until then, I've been Adam Ball.
I've been Van Connor, and we shall return.